lie began from the very beginning of time, right? And I can ask you one question right now. What does history tell us you about Africa? Who discovered Africa? If you write right now on Google who discovered Africa, you find out that it's one white man that he came and discovered Africa. And you can ask yourself that how can you discover a place that already exists? How can you discover a place that people already live in that place? It is impossible, but that's what the history tells us. That's what people believe about Africa, that it was discovered by a white man. This guy, he came, and then he went back, he gave a report, and then the next we know is colonialism, because those guys, they sat somewhere to divide Africa like a piece of cake, because they discovered it, they own it, it belonged to them. But that is us. We discovered, we're the first people to know. And today you have a lot of people around the world that they think that Africa was discovered by them. Hey everybody, welcome once again to Swahili Nation One Africa. It is so good to be back. It's so good to be here. I want to welcome everybody from everywhere, whether you're watching right now or you'll be watching this show later. Please welcome and copy this link, like the show and share with somebody. Right now, as I'm saying, we are live on X, Facebook, and Instagram and YouTube as well. I think this is one of the very important time in our history. It's very important time as well for us as Swahili Nation to have this talk and this conversation. I don't want to spoil anything, but I want to invite everybody, wherever you are, all right, let us know in the comment section where you're watching from, and copy this link and share with somebody out there. We're going to have a very exciting conversation here today. I'm here to learn, and I believe you guys are there to learn as well. If you'll have any question, you'll have any curiosity, do not hesitate to drop down in the comment section. But most importantly, like this stream and share with somebody. Do that right now. Welcome Instagrammers, welcome Facebook, welcome X, welcome YouTube. Yeah, I'm very excited. 2 days ago, we had a very good conversation with one of our Congolese brother. Let me just say this before I begin. We send out our our prayers and also our thoughts to our brother and sisters in Congo. What is going there, it is awful, and I think it's that time for us to act for what we've been always talking about, uniting our people, and for us to be together, for us to stand for our people. This is that time, guys. This is that time. So many things have been happening. We've seen what is happening in Sudan. We've seen what is happening almost all across the continent of Africa. And this is not the time to talk anymore, but it's really a time to act. This is just telling us and showing us how urgent unity is needed in our continent, how urgent unity is needed within our people as well. So I hope us as youth and us as a people will play our role and our part, to really stand, for our people. So if you get some time, say some word for our people in Congo, but as well we need to, to put a little bit pressure on the regime and leaderships. It's time for something to be done to African Union, EAC, SADC. I know that tomorrow there will be a meeting, I think, with SADC, and they're trying to bring together all parts, part of Kagame and part of Congo. I hope, things work out. Yesterday, I believe today or yesterday, they were meeting. The president of Kenya, William Ruto, tried to call what Zoom meeting between all these two parts. But the feedback that I get is that the president of Congo did not show up to that meeting. So things are not looking so good. Different embassies have been attacked in Kinshasa, and Goma has been captured. So things are not really looking good, and I cannot imagine for our Congolese people what they're going through right now. Those who are in Congo and those who are outside, I cannot imagine because their families are there. Uh, the city of Goma has more than 1 million people, right? 1 million people, and now it's been captured. So everybody's just scattered everywhere. It is such an awful time, and this is what Congo have been going through for the past 30 years, guys. For the past 3 decades, this is what has been happening, in Congo. So it is very an urgent call, and I hope those who are in power to make a difference will do, and for us as well, we can make difference through our social medias, through our prayers as well. It's we can definitely do something. Organizations in the continent and some other organization outside as well. It is a time to stand for our people. So yeah, let me just pray before we begin this session, because today we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff, but I think we might touch a little bit about what is going on in Congo, because I think everything that is happening or everything that we talk about is actually touching the entire continent, including Congo as well. So appreciate everybody who is joining. Please like this stream, please copy this stream and share with somebody. My dear sister, she's here already right now, so you're gonna have a very productive conversation. So yeah, let me just raise a word of prayer and then we're gonna start right away. God, I thank you for today. I appreciate you that you give us this moment to come together as Africans, to come together as a people, God, to talk about this beautiful place you've given us, Africa. So I pray that this conversation today will ignite the fire inside of us to really know what to do, to really know where to go, to really learn and to adapt that spirit of accountability and responsibility, so that we may do something, for the sake of the next generation. God, I pray for wisdom and your presence, and everybody who is be here, God, I pray that you will, speak to us and use us the way you can. In your precious name, Christ, I pray. Amen. Amen. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, please like this stream and please share with somebody. Share with somebody. We can have a very productive conversation on what is happening around the world and what is happening specific right now in United States. I think there's a response that Africa can do. It is an opportunity for us to do something, and I have just the right person to come and to share about that. All right, that was in time, ladies and gentlemen. My sister Kofo Obasanjo, welcome.
Thank you so
Blackshire.
much. Yes. Thank you, Mika. Thank you. Lovely to be here. And yeah, I'm just really excited about
Mm,
this conversation that we're about to have. I think
mm,
we were talking a little bit beforehand, and you were like, oh, hold on, hold on. Let's not get
uh,
too far into the detail. But I think there's just so much to talk about, so much to unpack. And
yeah.
as we go along, honestly, I was
Mm,
making some notes even beforehand, and I'm
yeah.
just really excited to have this conversation. And I
Mm,
hope that, you mentioned ignite the flame. They say
yes.
change begins with conversation. So I don't think talking is a waste
Mm,
of time at all.
yeah. Yeah.
That's where change begins. That's where
Yeah.
we can start to drive the
Mm,
change we want to see. People need to talk about these things, and hopefully
mm,
it will end up in the right ears and
yeah.
propel people to act. So, really
Yeah.
excited to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Wow. Wow. So I appreciate that. First of all, thank you so much for coming. I know you're very busy, very occupied, but for setting this time and be here with us, we really appreciate it, and we don't take it for granted. So thank you so
Thank
very
you.
much. And before we begin, I wanted to begin with something that we believe here in SNOA, or our year theme. Every single year we have a theme that we run with.
Mhm.
But I wanted, there might be some people who do not know who is Black Shire. So maybe we can start from there. Who is Black Shire?
Okay, so my name is Dr. Kofo Obasanjo Blackshire, and
Mm,
some people would recognize a portion of the name, the Obasanjo bit. My
mm,
father was president of Nigeria 2 terms running from
mm,
1999 to 2007. And
mm,
prior to that, he had been head of state under running a military government from 1976 to 1979, when he
mm,
handed over to a civilian democratically elected government. So that's where that familiarity with the Obasanjo part of the name might come from. Of course, I'm married, hence the
mm,
Blackshire. So
mm,
that's a little bit about myself. And one of the things that maybe might be worth sharing with your audience about me
mm,
is I have this passion for Africa. I live in the UK, but I go back to Nigeria practically every year because I want my children who have been born in the UK to understand that an important part of their heritage is African. I want them
mm,
to appreciate that and to understand and learn about that. As we
mm,
all know, people are people. Their father
mm,
is an Englishman, and they're part of the English culture that is so wonderful, so fabulous, so great. I want
mm,
them to absorb and embrace that. I'm
mm,
Nigerian, African, and there's so many parts of our culture and
yeah.
that side of their heritage that is wonderful, magnificent, and great. I want them to embrace that. So I say to my sons, look, you are more than enough. You're not insufficient, half of this or half of that. You're whole.
Mm,
And what I want them to do is embrace all the good parts of being English or British and all the great parts of being African and Nigerian. So
mm,
that's a bit about myself. And just to add to that, one of the questions I asked to my father, you're going back now almost 2 decades. This passion
mm,
for
yeah.
Africa, this passion to see Africa progress and
Mm,
develop was born in me
mm,
maybe from birth. But I remember going to my dad about 20 years ago and saying, look, what can I
mm,
do to make a change? What can I do to make a difference, to really
yeah.
be an agent of change in this world? And he said
Mm,
to me, look, go away and go and get some life experience, go and get
mm,
married, have a job, live a little bit, and then let's have this conversation. So
mm,
I did that. And, the last several years has been all of those things, a job,
mm,
having children, getting married, building a home, building a career. And then I went back to him again, propelled by, you prayed at the beginning of this session, which I
mm,
absolutely loved. So I feel
mm,
propelled again by God to say, let's ask that question again of my father. And this time he said to me, not go and do this or go and do that in terms of living life. I said, go and build credibility. So go and study
wow.
this
Mm,
whole area of international relations, politics, because that way, not only does it make you credible, you actually have
mm,
an understanding of what you're talking about. So I went off, even before we left Nigeria, I started to
mm,
research. And then I came back to the UK and immediately registered at the London School of Economics and Political Science and
mm,
studied international relations. And on the back
mm,
of that, as soon as I finished, COVID hit. I couldn't go anywhere. My dad was also stuck in lockdown. And then we started the
mm,
process of researching and working on a book, which
mm,
was published in 2023 called Pillars of Statecraft. So, yes, that passion and hunger to
mm,
change not just Africa, but I see
yeah.
myself, and Mika, you probably see yourself too, as somebody,
Mm,
people who can change the world. It
yeah.
starts with me, it starts with you, but we
Mm,
need to make ourselves credible so that when we talk, people take us
mm,
seriously. It's not just, oh, Obasanjo's daughter that doesn't know what she's talking about.
yeah. Yeah.
I do know what I'm talking about. I've studied
Yeah.
this stuff. I've written
Mm,
about it and I continue to study and read about
yeah.
it. So it's an ongoing process for me. So I'm
Mm,
truly excited to have this conversation with you, and let's see where we
yeah.
where we get to with it.
I think, and that is one of the things, Dr. Kofo, that I really admire about you, because I remember last year when we were having that conversation. Well, guys, just to give you a little bit of the backstory, we had an opportunity. We were in Kenya and are going to this one university called Lokenya University to launch the basically kind of like Pan African Institute of Professor Piolo Lumumba. And luckily I was in the same car with Dr. Kofo, and
It
and
wasn't
I
luck.
honestly.
It was God.
Exactly, because Madam Edina, she had to make sure that I ride in that car. I was in the same car with Dr. Fofo and also the ambassador from
Yes.
I forgot his name. Oh my God.
Dr. Williams.
Yes, Dr. Williams, exactly.
Yes.
So Madam Edina, she just told me that, hey, I'm gonna put you in this STEM car. You're gonna be with Dr. Kofo, and she told me who is Dr. Kofo and every amazing things about you. She told me about Ambassador. She said, I just want you to be in that car. Go there. So she forced me. I was there, and I believe for the next like 1 hour and a half, I was quiet. I did not know what to say. I was just processing everything in my mind. That okay, what can I say? What can I ask? But one thing that I really admire about you, Dr. Kofo, is that so eventually I started to ask you question and we started conversation, and your heart towards Africa, it was just so pure that I was,
Mhm.
I was like, all right, if Dr. Kofo thinks about this and wants to do this for the continent, who am I basically have to do, I also have to do, because I mean, your dad, of course, has a reputation, basically your entire family, of what you have done and what he's continued to do right now. I think he's like 88 years of age. What he's continuing to do for the continent and
Yeah.
sacrifice that he has to make for the family. And, his daughter as well, she has just this passion for Africa, passion for uniting the continent, and wants to do even more for the continent. I was like,
Mhm.
wow, if it was me, I'll be just kind of like, okay, I think now is time to relax. We have done a lot of things already. Let me just relax, enjoy my family, and just that. But the passion that you have and the zeal that you have for the continent, it was so inspiring. And that's why, I had, to, take your number, and I was like, okay, we're gonna have a conversation.
Yeah.
I know last year we did not manage to do that. But this year I am so excited that, this is one of the many conversation we're going to have. I just need to say that in front of everybody.
Yeah.
Um,
But
so
honestly, you're so right,
yeah,
Mika. And I think what inspires me is my
yeah,
father. You know,
mm,
as you've mentioned, he's 88
yeah,
in March. And this
mm,
is somebody who, if you said you should relax, he certainly
mm,
should relax. He's been imprisoned.
mm,
He's escaped multiple assassination attempts, multiple
mm,
attempts on his life. If anybody
mm,
should relax and say, I've done enough, it's that
yeah,
man. But he's
yeah,
everywhere. I can't keep up with him. 1 minute he's in Vietnam, the next minute he's in Congo, next minute he's
yeah,
in Ghana. He's all over the place. And he's striving to
mm,
make and create a fairer and more just world, not just
wow,
Africa, not just Nigeria, but the
mm,
world. And I'm
mm,
like, if at his age he's not slowing down, how can I
mm,
slow down?
yeah,
What
yeah,
is my
yeah,
excuse?
yeah,
So I think we're all, we
mm,
owe it to ourselves, we owe it to
yes,
our children, we owe it to the future of
mm,
our continent, we owe it to this
mm,
world to keep
yeah,
fighting, to keep striving. And I look at some of the comments and some of the posts that I write,
mm,
and people
mm,
are like, oh, well, it's all about corrupt leaders, all about this and that. And
mm,
absolutely, it's about corrupt leaders. Of course,
mm,
we talk about
mm,
that. It talks about leadership and politics
yeah,
and the situation now in DRC and in
mm,
Sudan. And leadership, deficient
mm,
leadership is a big part of that. But the
yeah,
question, as I said, everything, change begins with conversation. And
yes,
change also starts with me. It starts
mm-hmm,
with you. We can
mm-hmm,
sit there and shout all we like. If we are not
mm-hmm,
the change we want to see, we're
yeah.
simply a part of the problem.
Yeah, yeah, 100%, 100%. The couple weeks ago, madam, I've been working on this for a while, and I came up with the list, right, of three, what do I think are three enemies of Africa, right? I remember Julius Kambaga Nyerere, the founder of Tanzania, he came up with those three
Mhm.
basically like enemies of Africa, and it was poverty, disease, and ignorance, right? And so when I was thinking about in like today's world, and I realized that okay, poverty is not really an issue because Africa is not poor, right? But there's something else behind it that is
Yeah.
causing us to be where we are. And my list, it was like the first is mentality or mindset. I think this
Yes.
is the biggest enemy of Africa. Before we blame colonizers, before we blame anybody else,
Yeah.
leader or anyone, is our mindset. Because even those leaders, they have also mindset, right? The
Exactly.
mindset of begging instead of really working hard and transforming our continent. The mindset of just feeling less about ourselves. You know what I'm saying? The mindset of really devaluing ourselves, not really treating each other,
Mm.
with respect. But we only
Yes.
see tribes, we see religions, we see all these classes, And the second one that I came up with, it was, of course, you go now to the leadership. That mindset, it produces a certain type of
Mm.
leaders, right?
Mm.
If you go on the street and you find little kids, begging for money when they see, white people on the street, they think like, okay, this person has money, please give me this, give me that.
Yes.
That mindset, if it grows after 30 years, this person become a leader, is gonna do the same thing that most of leaders are doing today, right? Begging for loans, and aids for
Yes.
the continent. And then the final one, I came up with those who exploit Africa, or Africa exploiters. So these people, a lot of us, we focus on the Westerners and Easterners, but in this category, we even have Black people, we have Africans, people who are in our society, and they want to exploit us, maybe because of however, because of their businesses, because of
Mhm.
anything. So these three group of people, thinking about it, and I'm trying to write something about it right now. They came to realize that this is what really pulling us backward. But when you look deep inside, you see the source of everything is this mindset, the way we
Yes.
think, the way we act, the way we move. And I think that's the reason why when I was reading your article on LinkedIn, I had to reach out. I was like, all right,
Yeah.
I need to have this conversation, because everything you write there, it's about that, madam.
Indeed. And scripture also says, as a man
Mm,
thinks in his heart, so he is. So you've
yes.
hit it on the head. It all
Mm,
starts in the head, in the mind. You know,
mm,
your mentality does shape you. And
mm,
we have these leaders that have a
mm,
poverty mindset. So even though
mm.
they're steeped in wealth, they've
Yeah.
stolen so much, they've feathered their nests, that
Mm,
mindset hasn't left them. And
yeah.
they're continuing
Mm,
to perpetuate that greed and that way
mm,
of just me, me, me
mm,
and myself and my family. And, so long as I can
yeah.
fill my pocket, buy some
Mm,
houses in Dubai, in the UK,
mm,
in the US, and I'm okay, me and my family, that's all
yeah.
that matters to them. And what
Mm,
is missing is that sense of service. When you are
mm,
elected into a position of power, into high office, you are
mm,
elected to serve. You're not elected to serve yourself. You are
mm,
supposed and are mandated to serve the people. That is your first,
mm,
foremost, principal, primary objective. And that's what
yeah.
we're missing. We have these people that have this mentality of, it's just about me. I'm simply
Mm,
there. It's my turn.
mm,
Fill my
mm,
pocket,
mm.
feather my nest,
That's it. Mm,
and doesn't matter what happens to other people. And that's just,
yeah.
it breaks my heart because you've said it.
Yeah.
Africa is not poor. We
Mm,
are abundantly blessed with so
mm,
much resources, natural resources, human
yeah.
resources. We're the youngest continent on the planet, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
So while other parts of the world are aging and their
Mm,
populations are declining, we are
mm,
young and
yeah.
our population is growing. But that
Yeah.
so-called demographic dividend could become a
Mm,
demographic debacle and become actually quite a problem for us if we don't
yeah.
address all these issues that hopefully we'll get to talk about some of them today. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely, definitely. So let me jump right into your article that you actually published. You wrote, yeah, like 3 days ago.
Yeah.
So this is what you wrote: as Donald Trump issues a rush of executive orders, several including the freeze of foreign aid, withdrawal from the Paris Agreement, and exit from the WHO, will have a severe implication for the most vulnerable parts of the world. Africa already suffers disappropriately from the negative effects of climate change, while the WHO has been vital in emergencies like Ebola, COVID, and MPOX. Trump's refrain of drill, baby, drill could expose oil dependent Africa economies like Nigeria and Angola to deflated oil and gas prices as the US becomes an even more aggressive competitor in the global energy market. So the question is this, and that is the core of this discussion today.
Mm.
How should Africa respond? Are there opportunities amid the blizzard of executive orders? So First of all, I want to know like what was going on in your mind when you are writing this, and when you're writing all these points. That's first. And second, I want us the first point to leave it for the last. All right, I think
Okay.
we can leave the last post for the last, first point. But I just want to know what was going on
Hmm.
throughout your mind, because I know different Africans, different people have been going through a lot of things. I hear stories, a lot of my people telling me that there's some, actually, governments are really freaking out right now in some part of Africa because of what is happening. So I just want to know, when you heard everything that Trump was saying in his plan and everything, what really was going on in your mind,
Hmm.
and we can carry on from there.
Sure. So Trump has been dominating the news. I mean, as I said, I'm in the UK. You turn on the news,
Mm,
everything is Trump. Is what has he done now? What has he done? And
mm,
I'm also conscious, just being aware and recognizing that we're also having conversation about Trump. So
yeah.
in one manner, I can say, are you feeding the monster? Because
Mm,
we're having conversation about Trump, and
mm,
I think this is what he wants. That everybody's talking about him.
mm,
Never mind. But when I just heard about all of those executive orders, what went through my mind were a few things. One was, what does this mean for Africa?
yeah.
Because those executive orders around freezing
Mm,
the foreign aid. What are
mm,
the implications? Withdrawal from the WHO. What does it actually mean? As somebody who's passionate about Africa, my first
mm,
instinct was, oh, what does this mean for the continent? So I
mm,
started to think about it and just ruminate over what are the implications. And
yeah.
honestly speaking, as I did that, I also thought, well, this man was chosen deliberately by the American people. So his first time, we could say maybe it was a bit of an accident. He didn't win the
Mm,
popular vote. And there were all sorts of interferences from foreign actors, maybe, that propelled him to that position. But this time
mm,
around, Americans intentionally
mm,
chose him. They voted for him. So I
mm,
started to wonder, okay, all of these things that he's doing, what does it actually mean for Africa? And
mm,
how should Africa respond? Because you can either choose to be a victim and say, okay, all of these things are happening to me. Or you can
mm,
say, okay, what can I do in response? So not a reaction, but you have a
yeah.
measured response. And say, okay, look, these
Mm,
things are coming my way. How should
mm,
I now manage the situation so that
mm,
I limit or mitigate the negative impact of all of these things on myself? And of
mm,
course, we know that America is still the global hegemon. So
yeah.
as our continent,
Mm,
what should we do? And I started
yeah.
to think, okay, if how should our leaders
Mm,
respond to this? And that's what prompted me to write that piece on LinkedIn and put it on
mm,
my website and so on and so forth, just to get people
yeah.
to have the conversation. And honestly, I've seen the
Mm,
the, responses on LinkedIn is triggered a whole heap of
yeah.
responses and reactions. And of
Yeah.
course, on a platform like that, you get
Yeah.
some unwanted comments too. But then I say to people, it's not an echo chamber. I don't want
Yeah.
people to just agree. Let's have the debate. If you
Let's have
disagree,
a
tell me
debate.
why.
Exactly.
Then let's
Yeah.
have the conversation. If everybody
Yeah.
just says yes, 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 yes,
Yeah.
then it's no good. But that was what was going
So,
to my mind. Like, okay, what should we do? Where is the
yeah.
opportunity? And I think
Mm,
I describe myself as a
mm,
defiant optimist. So when
yes.
something
Yes.
happens,
Mm,
I'm a human being, so there can be a tendency to despair. But
mm,
I quickly rally and say, okay,
yeah.
you can either
Yeah.
just cry about it and say, okay, woe is me, or say, look,
Yeah.
okay, once you've had your cry and
Yeah.
you've processed the situation, now
Mm,
what? Now what can
mm,
I do? So that was what
mm,
prompted that. Okay, what can we do?
yeah.
So let's have a
Mm,
cry. As you said, some people have been saying, oh, woe is me, leaders are running around. But
mm,
once we've
mm,
processed it, the
yeah.
next question is, how should we
Mm,
respond? What can we do?
yeah. Yeah.
Where are the
Yeah.
opportunities here that can move us forward?
So good, so good. I love that. I love how you put it. But I want to ask you this question before you start responding to that. Why do you think most of Africans are really happy with that? Because honestly, like I talk to everybody, I see comments, and Africans are just really happy. It's been Why are they happy? Why do you
Happy
think
with Trump's election, that Trump is now in power in America?
happy with some of them? Yes, they're happy with
Okay.
that. Second, because of those orders and those steps that he's taken, especially when you're talking about this loan and aid,
Mm,
like cutting
mm,
down that, of course,
yeah.
not only to Africa but everywhere. A lot of people, a lot of Africans are, to be honest, even myself, I'm kind of happy in my heart. Why do you think we are? Why do you think they're happy?
You know what, Mika? I think, honestly speaking,
Yeah,
hearing you say that Africans are rejoicing that Trump is going after and freezing, potentially
yeah.
cutting aid and loans is good
Mm,
news. It's good
mm,
news because it suggests to me that people
mm.
are waking up to the fact that aid and
Wow,
loans are
wow.
actually
Mm,
shackles. They are
yeah.
vehicles that
Mm,
don't advance our cause
mm,
or our continent. I mean,
yeah.
think about it.
Mm,
If somebody loans you money, even think about it as an individual, just one
yeah.
person. If somebody
Mm,
lends you money,
mm,
your creditor
mm,
becomes someone to whom you are beholden.
mm,
If they call in that debt at any time, and if you don't have the money, you're in trouble.
yeah.
Now, on a larger
Yeah.
scale, if you talk about, say,
Mm,
Nigeria or any other nation who
mm,
are billions of dollars or whatever it is
yeah.
in debt to
Mm,
China, to the US,
mm,
to the Paris Club, to whoever,
mm,
that implication is
mm.
multiplied and amplified so much more.
Wow. Yeah.
And then you also have to remember that when you are in that much debt, you
Mm,
are really
mm,
in trouble because
yeah.
not only do you have to service the debt, yeah,
Mm, mm,
in many cases, and this was what happened in Nigeria when my
mm,
father was in power.
mm,
One of the priorities he set was to have Nigeria's debt cancelled
yeah.
because he said you can't progress, you can't move forward because all you're doing with your revenue is you're
Mm,
servicing your debt. You're not even touching the principal. You're paying
mm,
interest. So you
mm,
can't really do anything. You can't address infrastructure,
mm.
healthcare. You can't develop your country because all you're doing is servicing your
Yeah,
debt.
yeah, yeah.
And
Exactly.
that goes on
Yeah.
for years and years and years. And
Mm,
unfortunately, in the case of
mm,
Nigeria, we cleared
mm,
our debts, and then
mm,
successive governments have dragged us back. And not only
mm,
back into the debt that we were in, they've dragged us
mm.
even further back. So getting out of that debt is going to, I don't know if it might be my great grandchildren's generation that would even touch it. And that's
Yeah.
why I think people are happy because they're learning
Mm,
and they come to the
mm,
realization that
mm.
loans are a means of, different kind of slavery.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
keeps you
yeah,
enslaved. And
yeah.
aid is similar because I was talking to my sister recently and she said in Nigeria,
Mm, mm,
aid has become a bit of a racket. So, and the people that are giving us this aid, they also figure out that once the aid is given to a
yeah.
nation, it gets pocketed by the
Mm,
officials, it disappears. And
mm,
those officials, rather than being incentivized to
mm.
develop the country, to
Yeah.
invest in healthcare, to put that aid where it should go and
Mm,
help the people with whether
mm,
that's water, sanitation,
mm, mm,
etc., education. They don't
mm.
do that. All they do is just look after themselves and they don't
Yeah.
bother. So the aid is nothing but
Mm,
a problem. So
mm,
when
mm,
people are saying they're happy that aid is now being cut and loans are going to be removed, I'm
mm.
like, yes, hallelujah.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
now we can really start to push our leaders to
Yeah.
work and
Mm,
to develop the nations because Africa is so vast, is so
mm,
diverse, and the
mm.
dispersion of the resources is one that should cause us to collaborate and say, okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
DRC has so much cobalt. They're
Mm,
exporting about 90% of that cobalt to China, if not
mm.
more, where it's
Yeah.
then processed and then it's
Mm,
sold back to us at a premium. So we are in this cycle of underdevelopment and
mm,
retardation and failure to diversify and so on
mm.
and so forth. And hopefully with the loans being cut and the aid being cut,
Yeah.
It's a wake-up call. The wake-up call we missed with COVID, the wake-up
Mm.
call our leaders missed with Ebola, the wake-up call
Mm.
they missed with coups. Maybe
Mm.
this one will finally shake them awake and say, okay, guys, how
Yeah.
do we partner together? How do
Yes.
we fully
Yes.
implement the
Mm.
AFTA, so the Africa Free Continental Free
Yeah.
Trade Area?
Trade
How
area.
do we
Yeah.
bring that to life and make that work fully?
Mm.
I'm hopeful. I don't know if
Mm.
my hope will be disappointed, but I'm hopeful that this new wake-up call will drive the right actions and responses from our leaders. Because honestly,
Yeah.
leadership, corrupt,
Mm.
deficient,
Mm.
weak, is
Mm.
a big part of our problem. But yeah,
Yeah.
let's have the conversation and let's keep pushing to get those leaders working the way they should.
Yeah, I mean, you touched something that I think I cannot really let it go. Um, I've been reading this one book called Poverty Within, Not on the Skin. It's really
Mm,
nice book written by one guy. His name is Erastus Mtui. Amongst all books I read, this one is just I can't even finish because it's so
okay.
good. I keep going back and forth, and he was sharing about the same thing, loans and aid, and he was talking about the time of Ghana and even Tanzania when they shifted from the lower per capita and then they
Mm,
went all the way to the middle. And then he was saying, and so many other African countries, so many leaders in the government in these particular countries, they did not want that to happen. They were actually fighting against that so that the country can remain in lower per capita, because certainly like when you are there, then the amount of loans and aid you receive is actually higher than those who are in the middle and somewhere high. You know what I'm saying? So they would rather, these few people
mm,
would rather keep
mm.
the country there, its status there, even though it has already moved, shifted from there
Yeah,
to the middle,
yeah,
just for the sake of receiving those loans and aid, because it's not really going to do the work for the people, but
exactly.
it is the way for them to put this money in the pocket, and that's why loan and aid is not really effective, in our continent. So
It's
for
not.
but this decision that America is taking, it is such an opportunity for our
Mhm.
leaders and a wake up call, because people, they never approve that. They don't want that. They want to see independent Africa in a way that we can actually stand on our own, to certain degree, and then loan, it could be some sort of support that we can always partner, with different nations. We can always work together. But the problem comes when you fully depend on them. That cutting of these, it means like your government is going to collapse. There's nothing gonna go on. Right now, you hear excuses in some countries that, oh, the reason why we're not doing all these projects because we no more have loans. We don't have loans coming in our countries. So that would be some of the excuses we're gonna hear from our leaders. And that's kind of mentality we
Yeah.
have, not just there but in our people. So let's jump with the first point that you mentioned. I think I really love all the points you mentioned here, madam, starting with, I said the first one is gonna be the last: prosperity or wealth creation.
Yes.
I was reading this and I thought that I think you have a lot to say in this, but for the sake of just writing here, you just minimize a little bit. I want to get all of your brain in this:
Yeah.
prosperity or wealth creation. That's one of the opportunity. That's one of the Africa can respond. Can you dive into that a little bit?
Yes. So thank you for asking that question. Prosperity. I think I already said Africa is not poor. We
Mm,
have vast and abundant resources. So if you think about the world today, whether we like it or not, it's still powered. 80% of the world's energy is provided by fossil fuels. Everybody is worried about, okay, climate change. I get it. Climate change it's not even a climate change, it's a climate emergency. It's actually the right expression. We need to address that. But we are in a world that is still very dependent on fossil fuels. 80% of the energy is still provided by fossil fuels. Africa has fossil fuels. So whether that's, you already mentioned Angola, Nigeria, and all of those oil and gas dependent nations. We have that as well. But thinking about the future, we also have those critical minerals that are needed to power the future. So Africa is poised, whether that's for today or for tomorrow. We have the resources to provide today's energy needs and to propel the world into the future for tomorrow's energy requirements as well. So we have both. And I think that means when you're thinking about wealth creation, I already touched on the DRC with all the cobalt. So cobalt sitting in DRC, it possesses the world's largest reserves of cobalt, which is used in electric vehicle batteries and mobile phone batteries. Why? I'm scratching my head, and I'm still scratching my head. Are we exporting 97% of that cobalt to other nations to be
Yeah.
processed and then imported back? When I talk about AFTA and the opportunity for wealth creation, I mean, we're not talking about something that's going to happen tomorrow, but they say the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Let's start
Exactly.
now. Let's start to say, okay, look, rather than exporting all of that cobalt to then be processed elsewhere, let's look at manufacturing. Let's look at processing in continent. Let's create these hubs that, okay, you mine something in the DRC, rather than exporting it elsewhere, you find a hub, whether in the DRC itself or in other partner nations in Africa, where you develop your manufacturing. You are creating jobs. You are keeping all of this, I want to use the word in-house, or let's call it in-continent. And you're removing your dependencies on an outside nation that may at any point turn hostile. You don't know. So we need to keep all of these. And that's why I see opportunities for wealth creation. In my book, I also refer to things like, when we talk about economic diversification, fashion, African fashion is worth billions of dollars.
Billions of money. Yes.
African music. I'm a big lover of
Wow.
Afrobeats. It's
Oh
worth
yeah. Oh
billions
yeah.
of
It's
dollars,
taking
and
over the globe.
it's taking over the globe. So
Yeah.
there's so much more that we can do outside of conventional, let's say, resources like fossil fuels. So fossil
Yeah.
fuels we need today. We've got that. We can continue to harness those resources. We've also got fuels for tomorrow. So let's harness them, but let's do it in a sensible manner that allows for employment. And we've got a massive, energetic, entrepreneurial
Yeah.
youth in our continent. Let's unleash them. Let's educate them. Let's equip them. Let's make sure they're healthy. And this is where healthcare comes in. And that force, really, you've talked about taking over the world, can take over the
Yeah.
world. But
Yeah.
we need to have informed, healthy, educated youth, and then unleashed upon this world to really make a difference. And wealth
Yeah.
creation for me is so important because that's the way to elevate and lift us out of poverty. Africa
Yeah.
is not poor. I can say that
Yeah.
until until I'm out of breath. We're not poor. We're being impoverished by foolish decisions, bad leadership, corruption, and all the other elements that we talk about. It's a real pity. And it breaks my heart. I refer to it in the full piece on my website, that for the DRC, I find it heartbreaking that this decision to export all their cobalt, pretty much all, is robbing them of so much opportunity. China, by the way, prioritizes manufacturing and processing. They're very
Yeah.
protectionist about their critical minerals. They're really protectionist. So why don't we take a leaf from their book? Why are we allowing ourselves to be exploited again? So for me, it's a big frustration because there's so many opportunities there. We really need to bring AFTA into full implementation and drive that intracontinental trade, remove those barriers. Because one of the things I was reading was that, importing from, say, China can be cheaper than importing within the continent because we have these
Yeah.
trade barriers and these tariffs that are so high. We're actually undermining our own efforts and our own growth and cohesion as a continent. So I could go on and on and on,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
just what I
Exactly.
think.
You know what you're touching on, it is so true because I take an example of my own country. It is the only country in the world that has a tanzanite.
Mm.
Tanzanite is one of the rare gemstone you cannot find anywhere but only in Tanzania. But do you know who makes most of it? Who makes the profit most of it? There's no African country, but the first country is India. India is making a whole lot of money out of Tanzania. The only mineral that you can find in Tanzania, this blue gemstone, right? They
Yeah,
use
I
it
know.
for
Yeah,
rings
yes,
and
yes.
for exactly. But India makes most of it, but not Tanzania. And that is the case for every single resources we have in the continent, that
Yeah.
it is actually prospering other nations. Africa, we became how can I say NGO, right? We became like NGO to other countries. We tool to support and actually sustain them economically while we are, while we are dying inside out. And I think what you wrote and what you say about prosperity, it is it is an opportunity. I see this as an opportunity that, if we fail to make decision on our own to get out from this, shackle of, loans and aids. But now we have an opportunity to start focus within, right? Okay, that, because honestly, if we sit on the negotiation table, if we really know who we are, and our mindset is really decolonized, we understand who we are, then we're no longer going to be begging, but we're going to sit as partners, and talk about, all right, this is an opportunity you could have in my country. We need our 50, you can get your 50, and this is how we can do this. Could turn out to be a huge success
Mm.
if we really take it, in that way, instead of just sitting down and complaining, and
No,
mourning.
you're completely right. I mean, Nigeria is the same thing. We
Mm,
export our crude, it's refined
mm.
elsewhere, and then we import it back. It's it's unimaginable madness. But that's the situation in our continent for the time being. But hopefully it will change. I'm optimistic. I mean, my father
you know
is the biggest optimist in the world. He's like, yeah, I see change. I see change coming. And I'm like,
yeah,
if you can
yeah,
see change, despite all the things that you've
yeah,
experienced and you continue to experience,
yeah.
then who am I to be pessimistic? So,
Indeed, indeed.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, I think, if he looks at you, he actually see the change, sees how you think and how you move and what you write. It makes completely sense. So the other point that you wrote here, it is, protection and security. Yeah, can you let us a little bit know about this? What you meant by this?
So with protection and security, and I don't want to make DRC like a problem child, but
Yeah.
I'm going to go there again because
Okay.
it's pertinent. So
Yes.
last year,
Mm,
anything that concerns Africa, I'm there. So you only have
mm,
to invite me and I'm there. I was
yeah.
invited to a welcome to the DRC event in London. And
Wow.
this group of young people, young guys,
Mm, mm,
entrepreneurs,
mm,
they were actually saying, so I loved the opening of your show. It was talking about
mm,
reimagining Africa.
yeah.
And last year, there were, we have this thing called Black History Month. It might just be, it
Mm,
might just be a Western thing because, of course, in
mm.
Africa, everybody is black. You don't have Black History Month. And the
That's true.
theme of Black History Month last year was reclaiming the
Wow.
narrative about everything. So you talk
Mm,
about reimagining Africa, it's reclaiming the narrative
mm,
about, okay, we're not just about wars and poverty
mm,
and
mm,
lack. There's
mm,
more. There's
mm,
beauty. There's
mm.
culture. There's
Yeah.
music.
Mm,
There's so much. And
yeah.
that welcome to the DRC event was truly trying to reclaim the narrative. And I went there and I
Mm,
thought, I'm Nigerian, I don't know anything about the DRC. But these
mm,
guys were trying to encourage people to visit the
mm,
DRC for tourism and
mm,
thereby incentivize and invite investment. And they were
mm,
like, you know what, it was full of people from the DRC and they were saying things like, we go back practically every year and you've gone
mm,
back and you've come back. So the
mm.
the news you see
Yeah.
in the media is
Mm,
dominated by war. Everything's
yeah.
going wrong. I mean, the DRC is huge, like, in terms of geography, it's massive. And
Yeah.
then, like,
Yeah. It is.
Goma is just one part. The war
Mm,
is concentrated to and limited to just one part
yeah.
of the nation. But there's so much else about the DRC that is beautiful. And we want people to
Mm.
come and see it, the wildlife and so on and so forth. And I thought, well, this is great. I was even beginning to
Wow.
think,
Wow.
you know what, maybe next time I go on holiday with my family, rather than going somewhere in Europe or elsewhere, I might
Yeah.
even try and convince my husband that we go to the DRC.
Mm,
And so when I started to hear this story again about Goma and so on,
mm,
that is dominating the headlines,
yeah.
I just
Mm,
thought, oh my
mm,
goodness. And
mm.
I just felt, how is this undermining all the work that those guys are doing as one
Wow.
example? And it's just like, ah,
mm,
It's really frustrating that we find ourselves,
mm,
as hard as we try to reclaim the narrative,
mm.
events seem to overtake us. And events
Yeah.
don't overtake us. We, our leaders,
Mm,
create these
mm,
problems. I mean, I've
mm,
researched Sudan quite a bit. The
mm.
Sudanese war in the West goes
Yeah.
largely
Yeah.
unreported. It's
Yeah.
eclipsed by events in Gaza,
Yeah.
is eclipsed by events in Ukraine. And don't get me
Mm,
wrong, those are worthy
mm.
of attention. Of course they are.
Yeah.
We're talking
Yeah.
about people. And if you talk about being a world citizen,
Mm,
they matter. But so do
mm,
the Sudanese, so do
mm,
the Congolese. We all
mm,
matter. And sadly,
mm.
what happens is, the news gets eclipsed by
Yeah.
the other stories. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, that gets me. So to
Mm,
me, this is where you can probably hear the exasperation in my voice. This is where the frustration is at,
mm,
we really need to find a means of addressing these wars. So
mm.
when the African Union talks about the silencing the guns aspiration, it needs to be one that is a real focus. How do we find those conflict prevention, conflict resolution mechanisms, any kind of
Mm,
early alert signal that would indicate something's about to happen, and then the AU, through whatever mechanisms they have in place that are effective, can
mm,
prevent those things before they erupt. Because
mm.
without security, not only do
Yeah.
your people suffer, you can't
Mm,
even attract investment. Let's forget about loans and aid. We don't want them anyway. But to
yeah.
get investment to help propel the continent
Yeah.
forward, where there's
Yeah.
no peace, where there's no security.
Mm,
I'm talking to you about the DRC, and I use that as an example
yeah.
because I was thinking,
Yeah.
okay, maybe we go there on holiday. But now I'm
Yeah.
rethinking them, like, oh,
Yeah.
and I know that those narratives in the media are not the full
Mm,
story. But how
yeah.
do I convince my husband to take him
Mm,
and our two
mm.
young children to the DRC when all he's hearing is about war? So
You
we
know?
do need peace and
Mm, mm,
security in the continent, and it needs to be a focus of the African Union and the leaders who need to set aside their own selfish agendas. I mean,
mm,
the story in Sudan is
mm.
driven by the personal
Yeah. Yeah.
agendas of two men.
Two people.
They're driving the country to its knees and keeping it there because they can't agree between themselves. It's like, okay, where is service here? Where is the people first part of this? It's all about me, me, me. And, if we don't have security in Africa, we don't have anything else because it's one of the first steps to get us
Yeah.
going forward. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You said it all. You said it all. I was just thinking at the moment that even if like me, I'm in my country and I'm an investor. I want to invest in business, in whatever. I can never do that. If I see like my country's not safe and I know that I could lose everything anytime, why would I do anything in my country? What I'll do is I'll just trying to find a safe place or seek asylum to another country and to go to invest there and to do my life there. And that's what and this is what is happening over and over and over
Mm.
again. Like if you have a little bit of ability to do something, you find that our kids, our family, they're moving somewhere else. Even business we are doing somewhere else, so our countries just keep on being on the same state that it actually is getting worse than the way it used to be. As days goes on, things are getting worse, and I think Africa is the only continent that things are getting worse, day by day. If you look at other perspective, you look at, for example, you can look at South Korea or Singapore 50, 60 years ago. We're the same economically. By the way, some of the countries in the continent, including Uganda, Nigeria, it was better economically than South Korea. But look at today, like we are going more backward and they're just there. Why? Like, what did they do? How did
Yeah.
they get there where they are? And why we keep, in the same state all over again? And I think the thing you say about security, it is really, yeah, it really matters. We really need to, and to be honest, I'll just be very honest with you. For me, to be honest, I don't have faith with African Union. I know I'm in the city of African Union, but I don't have faith at all. Like, I don't have faith at all because um I'll bring out this topic a little bit. I know there's a point we need to finish, but I'm looking at, for example, I'm looking at what is happening in the West Africa. I'm looking at what happened. I know there's different feelings with Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali, right? And them withdrawing themselves, people protesting right now, withdrawing themselves from ECOWAS. They don't want to be part of that, because they feel like ECOWAS is not really ECOWAS. It's been supported by somebody else, is working for the agenda of someone else, and not really the people on the ground. And I think that's kind of like the same feeling I have, for the African Union, because when I look at what happening in those three countries, and I'm like, that actually can happen in the entire continent. Like when you look at the African Union Vision 2063, you realize that our leaders and those who wrote these things, they know exactly what is happening in the continent, and they know the solutions. They know, like you look at that vision, you're like, these are people who knows, right? They know the truth, they know what to be done, but they just don't make decision. They just don't decide how to do. So it's either, I was having a conversation with my brother Congolese the other day. He said that I think the reason why things are like this in the continent, because our leaders, they're not really scared of us. They're scared of someone else. That if they do it, someone else, they'll have the consequences. We've seen what in the history of Africa what happened. So they take advantage of us by not doing what they're supposed to do right now. 2063, it is supposed to happen today. Silencing gun, it was supposed to happen a long time ago, but because of yeah, but
They've
because of
moved the
every day we
timeline.
need to silence, yeah, our people keep on dying. Sudan is still in war, more than a year. I went to Uganda. I met a lot of Sudanese people in Tanzania. A lot of millions of Sudanese. They're there. They're trying to study. Nothing is going on there. Everybody's been scattered all over the world. I mean, all over the continent, and nothing is happening in the country. That country, it's gonna need like 50 years or something to get back on its feet. Right now, Congo, it has been going on for all these years. It is possible to silence the gun and to bring security in our continent, but it just seems like nobody decided to do it. And why they don't do it? Like, okay, we have responsibility, we have a part to play as a people, but also in the leadership structure in the continent, the leaders are like gods. What I'm saying? Like what they decide, it actually matters, right? That's the system in most of our countries we have. We're not really democratic countries, like developed democrats, like you could talk about other countries outside there. So it is really painful that you can have bodies that are supposed to work for you, or institutions that are supposed to bring about change, but every single day is just meetings over meetings over meetings over meetings, and nothing is being done, or no solution is being brought to on the table.
I mean, you're absolutely right, Mika. I think the African Union itself might need to look inwards and be reformed, because
Mhm.
when you
Mm.
but
Reform.
one of the one of
Yeah.
the chapters in my book actually talks about partnership and institutions. And
Mm.
to be fair, so
Mm.
I'm not one to make excuses for people. If they're not doing
Yeah.
what they should be doing, then if you can, you get
Mm.
rid of them.
Mm.
But if we look at ASEAN, which is a kind of AU for the Asian nations, they
Yes.
have a mishmash, if you want to call it, of different
Mm.
countries in there. You
Mm.
talked about Singapore earlier. I was looking
Mm.
looking for it on the globe the other day. I have a globe at the down here in my
Wow.
office, because
Mm.
I like to have a look at things, and if somebody's talking to me about something, even in my 9 to 5 job, I want to know where things are. It's
Yeah.
really hard to find. It's so small. It's a really tiny
That's
nation.
true.
In
That's true.
geographical terms, Singapore
That's
is
true.
really hard to find, but it's become
That's
a
true.
powerhouse. And
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. And the reason I make that comparison is, so ASEAN has a combination, a mixture of Singapore is in there, with its really high GDP. You also
Yeah.
have nations like Cambodia and Laos in that same
Mm.
institution. And
Yeah.
it's not easy. In fact, some people make fun of ASEAN as they call it NATO, no action, talk only. All they do is talk. But it's the first step towards integration and
Yeah.
towards some kind of intra-regional
Mm.
effort to address specific issues. And
Mm.
that's why I see the African Union,
Mm.
despite its
Yeah.
imperfections, Give me one institution, one multilateral institution that is imperfect, and I will show you someone that is lying. Even the United Nations hasn't got it all right. But when you at least have a platform where you've got all of these disparate nations together, you have a starting point. The African Union needs reform. I know that. I've written about it in my book. There are many areas that can be improved upon, but it gives us a starting point. And the whole piece you've talked about with West Africa and all those issues there, honestly, I think things could have been done better. But okay, we are where we are with it. But let's take what we've got, utilize it to the best that we can. Not lose hope. I was talking to a friend the other day, and she's just come back. Well, she just come back from Nigeria. And she was like, I'm not even going to take my children there. She's completely lost hope. She had such a bad experience with one person. One business transaction went wrong. You have businesses in Africa, you haven't given up. And she was just so upset. She said, look, I'm not going to do this again. And I said, look, if we all take that position, one thing I would like to say is, there's an expression in Nigeria, and it's called Japa. You may have heard about it. It's when people leave. So you talked a little about the brain drain. They're leaving en masse to go to the UK, to go to Canada. I have a friend who lives in Saskatchewan. It gets down to -40. I'm like, -40 degrees C. OMG. But that's how bad things are. This brain drain. They'll rather go and live in -40 than stay in the continent. But we need to keep fighting. We need to fight for our future. We need to fight for our children. We need to fight for ourselves. We can't just give up and say, okay, you know what? It's not going to change and give up. As I said, if my father at 88, with everything he's been through, still sees hope, I see hope too. And I think we need to hold on to that hope no matter what.
Yeah. Thanks about that. So I think here is the really right point to connect with the next point that you talk about, politicians or leadership, because we are actually going towards that direction. Yeah, I know we spoke a lot about that, already, leadership, but in this context, how should Africa respond? You say politics or leadership. Let's get that.
So Africa, we have this thing called democracy, and I use the expression we have this thing called democracy because does it work? I don't know, but we've all accepted it as the best political model. Dictatorship doesn't work. That's a horrible thing. Communism is a failed experiment. But the question is, does Western style liberal democracy work in Africa? Question mark.
Yeah.
I don't know. So don't ask me what's the answer to that. I see the challenges because, settled states. And when I started to talk about the Japa thing, when we are just leaving, the question is, or the point I make is, okay, and call me whatever you want to call me, but I've been here because my father was a political prisoner when Abacha was in power. So I came to the UK in response to that. But people are leaving and I'm not judging anybody. I'm just saying, okay, people are making that decision to go and live in -40 because things are so difficult in Africa. You can't blame them for making that decision. But my point is, those settled states went through their own birth pangs. They went through pains. They haven't just become settled overnight. If you talk about Singapore, it went through its challenges. The UK, they fought civil wars. The US fought civil wars. So those settled states that everyone is running to have not been created overnight. They've gone through challenges too. They've had to fight to get to where they are. And they're still fighting. So, and the question about democracy, does it work in Africa? I'm not sure. Is it even working in the West? If we're seeing Trump, and we started this whole thing with Trump, is that the kind of leader that, honestly speaking, is worthy of that position of the most powerful man in the world? I question that. That's not for me to decide. The American people have made their decision and they're living with the consequences of those decisions. You probably have heard that Trump has frozen grants and loans in America now. And people it's caused chaos and outrage and confusion. People are not sure where they're going to, whether they can access healthcare or even, jobs and things like that. So it's causing a lot of issues. So democracy, we need to have a discussion about that.
Yeah.
What does that look like for Africa? What's the
Yeah.
best model for Africa? Because this current system where every 4 or 5 years you change
Mm.
government, it leads to
Mm.
a lack of continuity. And
Mm.
our African mindset, we know, is
Mm.
okay, when it's my turn, as they say, it's my turn. They get
Yeah.
there. There is no sense of, okay, what did the previous administration do
Yeah.
that was good, that we can
Mm.
progress? It's
Yes.
let's tear it all up. Let's start again.
Mm.
It's all a means of making money. They start again, new
Mm.
programs, they start again, new policies,
Yeah.
and so on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I look at Rwanda with a
Mm.
degree of admiration, honestly. And I'll
Yeah.
tell you why, Mika.
Yeah.
Because not more than 30 years ago, that nation was decimated.
Yeah.
The worst horrors you can imagine.
Mm.
And now, 30 years later, there or
Mm.
thereabouts, the
Mm.
UK is thinking about sending their migrants to Rwanda. It's been
Mm.
transformed. Is it perfect? Absolutely not.
Mm.
President Kagame himself would
Mm.
acknowledge that succession is something that needs
Mm.
to be sorted out because
Yeah.
no one lives forever. What
Mm.
happens when he goes? What happens
Mm.
when either by election or by
Mm.
natural circumstances he's no longer there? There
Mm.
is that big question mark. But I see that, and similar model in Singapore, by the way, it's
Yeah.
some people say it's not a real democracy,
Mm.
but those models where you have citizen-centered,
Mm.
good leaders that
Yeah.
perpetuate and continue
Mm.
reforms and policies, you
Mm.
stabilize the nation, and
Mm.
then things can move forward. Of course, the
Yeah.
flip side is if you get bad leaders, and then we see that in
Mm.
Africa quite a lot, then you're stuck with the mess. So the question is,
Yeah.
how do we find our own pathway
Yeah.
between these two extremes of these regular elections and
Yeah.
these never want to leave? What's
Yeah.
the middle ground for Africa that would work? I don't know. I think we need to have a conversation
That's
and a
that's
debate about that.
Dr. Kofo,
Yeah.
that's really good question. My next question, I was asking you like, so okay, so what do you think it would be a good leadership model for our continent?
Oh,
Because what you say, I agree with you 100%.
yeah.
And I really subscribe to that, and I really think the same that um you know somebody said, even when, colonizers, when we gain or they gave us independence, however you look at it, it was just the exchange of, white men sit, the white men, left, and then the African men sat on the same chair, because we are still using the
Yeah.
same system that
Yeah.
they used it. I just came from Nigeria 2 weeks ago. I was in Nigeria and
Okay.
I forgot to find you. My goodness, I was also at least text you that I am in Nigeria. I went to Abuja,
All right.
and I had to pay 150 US dollar for a visa,
Wow.
and a flight ticket. It was altogether it was 2,000 US dollars to go from
Wow.
Tanzania to Nigeria, Nigeria to Tanzania. It's extremely expensive,
Wow.
right? I am in Ethiopia. At least I had to pay 60 US dollar here. I'm saying at least, but it's still, because I used to pay
That's still
50 back
expensive.
in the days. Right now it's 60 already. Only to hear stories from my friends from Canada. They came here. They had just to pay $40 for visa. I'm an African. And this is the land of Africa, the way Africa Union is, the capital
Yeah.
city of Africa.
Yeah.
How to pay $60? Nigeria 150. And it goes the same way. Like if you want to come to my country, or you the same thing. If you come to Tanzania, you're gonna need to pay a certain amount of dollar. I need to
Yeah.
find out about that. But definitely it's not gonna be 150. Dr. Kofi, you have to become president of Nigeria, change things. So
I love
so
that.
so so the white men left. We celebrated independence, but
Yeah.
then it was just it's. I kind of feel like the black man was looking at this white man. Oh, this man, he's making a lot of money out of this. All right, I cannot wait to get that seat and to do the same thing. So they left. We still embrace the same system. Most of our countries, we don't even want to change our constitution. We
Yeah.
still use the same constitution that was used during the colonialism. We still use the same thing, and just the same system. Visa. All these crazy borders that we have. That okay, you cannot go
Mhm.
here and there. We're still using the same thing, and it's just messing things up.
Mm.
Messing things up because we can take an example of United States of America. All these states, you could call them countries. You know what I'm saying? But they had to come together, and today this is one of the strongest nation
Yeah,
in the whole world. Because of that unity that they have. You
yeah,
come to Africa, you see every single we call country in the continent. They have their uniqueness. There's something unique about Ethiopia, about Egypt, about Tanzania, about Nigeria. There's something unique about these countries, but then we just keep embracing on this. We've gotten so comfortable
yeah.
with so-called poor countries and all
Mm.
this system that we don't even think about, okay, we need something of our own to change. If this system is working for them, maybe
Yeah.
because they're there already, they got themselves figured out. Right now they just need to maintain and to even go farther. But for us, we are still here. We're still trying to figure out how we're going to run things. We need to find a thing that will, I think that would be a really good question to really think about it and to really
I think
answer. Mm,
you're absolutely right. I think, that model, and if you think about where that model came from, the Western
yeah.
liberal style democracy, it came from kings. So you had
Oh, yeah.
monarchies that
Yeah.
were established for a long time,
Mm,
and that thinking, that mindset of, okay, you have the king, the king's
mm,
word is law,
mm,
was the basis upon which, with the Magna Carta, etc., you've now built these settled states.
mm, mm,
We have gone from being colonized and enslaved
mm,
to try
mm,
and emulate what they've done.
mm.
I think that's why we're stuck. And you made a good
Wow.
point, that mentality, that mindset of, okay, this is what the colonizers did. That's my
Mm,
model. And
mm.
on top of this is what the colonizers, that's my model. They also use this
Mm,
divide and conquer
wow. Yeah.
approach. And
Wow.
we've perpetuated divide and conquer. So it's not just the
Mm,
Westerners dividing and conquering us. We're
mm.
dividing and conquering ourselves. You use the visa
Yes.
example.
Mm.
Alaji Dangote, the wealthiest man in Africa, he said
Oh
it.
yeah. Yeah.
He
Yeah.
had to get visas to go to
I remember that.
every single place. It's a problem. It frustrates business. It frustrates travel. When somebody says to me, come and visit the DRC, not only is
Mm.
there this whole conflict thing to to sort out, you need to
They need to
sort
sort
out
out visa.
visa, and not only do you have the visa and the travel issues, trade
Mm.
is an issue. We've talked about that
Yeah.
earlier. The tariffs
Mm.
that are
Yeah.
that are introduced between countries is also a
Mm.
barrier. I mean, I'll use
Mm.
the example of the European Union. It's
Mm.
a model. I'm not saying copy paste. Take
Mm.
what worked there. We talk about
Mm.
reform for the African Union. We can
Mm.
learn. We don't have to start everything with a clean sheet. The
Yeah.
European Union, they've done some things right. They haven't done some things
Mm.
well, hence Brexit. That's a
Yeah.
whole other story. But we can learn from what they did well and
Mm.
apply the ones that are applicable. I'm a
Yeah.
student of adopt and adapt.
Mm.
Take it,
Yeah.
look at it. Does it fit? No,
Yeah.
discard. Does some part fit? Yes, take the part that fits. The one that
Mm.
doesn't, throw it away. And that
Yeah.
way, because we're not starting everything from scratch, we can move
Mm.
forward faster. It's the same with this
Mm.
whole democracy question. I don't know the
Mm.
answer, but it's
Mm.
feeling to me. I live in the UK,
Yeah.
as I said. Democracy is not working well here. It's not
Mm.
working well in the US. It's not working well in
Mm.
many European states. There's a
Mm.
large lurch to the right.
Mm.
This whole right-wing ideology is beginning to
Mm.
gain ground. It's very
Yeah.
worrying. And even in France, some of the last elections,
Mm.
the
Mm.
right wing made some significant gains. I'm starting to
Mm.
think, oh my goodness, what is the world becoming? If we're all
Mm.
practicing this democracy and it's potentially leading to
Mm.
outcomes that might turn us right back. No one wants to see World War I or World War II again. No one wants to
Yeah.
experience the Cold War again. We feel we've
Mm.
made so much progress with
Mm.
multilateralism, with
Mm.
mutual cooperation. We were lulled into this sense of, oh, everything is good, everything is fine. We're all now working towards the
Mm.
common good.
Yeah.
Sadly,
Yeah.
Russia has been a wake-up call with
Mm.
Ukraine. Russia with
Mm.
Georgia was the first wake-up call. I don't think the
Yeah.
world got it. Then the
Mm.
recent one with Ukraine is like, okay, we're
Mm.
not mutually working towards the same goal.
Mm.
There's some parts of the world that have their own agenda. So we
Yeah.
need to review some of these models and
Yeah.
mechanisms and ask some
Absolutely.
difficult questions. And in
Mm.
Africa, I think one of those questions begins really with leadership, this politics piece,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
if the leadership is broken,
Mm.
nothing else is going to work. Then you've got your
Yeah.
peace and security behind that. You've got
Yeah.
your prosperity. You're putting your
Yeah.
people first. And then you've got your
Mm.
building blocks. But it starts, they say the fish rots from the head. It
Yeah.
starts with the head. If we don't get
Yes.
that right, that's an issue. And then our institutions as well,
Mm.
they are weak. So we had
Mm.
elections in
Mm.
Nigeria, and that was being
Mm.
challenged. And
Mm.
there's a whole heap. That's another conversation of what
Mm.
happened there. What's
Mm.
happened there? And it's
Mm.
happening all over the continent. You have these elections, and then
Mm.
there's some interference, and then you have
Yeah.
an outcome that is like, okay, we're questioning
Mm.
this. And you have outside forces, foreign actors.
Mm.
When the election results came out in Nigeria, while
Mm.
they were still being challenged in courts, you had the
Mm.
US president and the president of the UK prime minister calling to congratulate the alleged win. I'm like, okay, we haven't even settled this among ourselves yet. But they were quick to get in there. So you've got
Yeah.
all of these things, and you're like, okay, we as a continent, we really
Mm.
need to be we need to sort ourselves out. I know that that's a loose expression, but we need to find a way to
Mm.
be stable,
That's
to
true.
be confident,
Yeah.
and to be
Yeah.
strong. We've
Yeah.
now um, got membership into the G20. What a massive leap forward. We have a
Yeah.
seat at the
Yeah.
table. Let's
Mm.
present ourselves as a worthy partner, a
Yeah.
credible one with whom you
Yeah.
can actually have a discussion. And when we're
Mm.
negotiating things at that table, we want to be
Mm.
taken seriously. And if we're a
Mm-hmm.
continent that is littered with these bad leaders and poor
Yeah.
leadership, no one's going to take
Mm.
us seriously. Even in the
Ain't
G20,
nobody's
just
gonna
like
take
you're
us
just remember,
serious. Yeah.
you're just taking
Yeah.
the seat here. You're just a waste of time.
Yeah. Yeah, and what you're saying is so true. Like we find ourselves, it's kind of like what we are fighting for those two security seats in UN Council, and you get it, and nothing being done. Right? You can be in
Exactly.
G20, or you can even be in G8, and I mean G7, and nothing. I mean, if you're in there, that means you'll be G8, and
Yeah.
nothing
But
happens to you.
what's the
You know?
point of it exactly? So you can be in that group. You can be a
Yeah.
member, but if you don't
Mm.
utilize your membership and your presence
Yeah.
there to
Yeah.
advance the continent, then you
Yeah.
might as well not be there. That's the point. You might as well
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
might as well not. You're redundant.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I
Yeah.
and I think that's the frustration. And when I talk about these
Yeah.
things, I get passionate, and my frustration
I
comes out
love
because I'm
that.
like, we're better than this. We are better than this. If
We are.
Singapore, I can't even find in my globe, is so advanced, and people are rushing to Singapore from the West. They're going there to do business. You can't find the darn thing on the globe. I mean, no disrespect
Yeah.
to Singapore,
Yeah.
it's
It's
small
true.
and they
Yeah.
don't have resources, but
Mm.
they've built Lee Kuan Yew. I reference him in my book as one of the leaders that I admire. I don't say it's a
Mm.
perfect system. It's not, but no system is perfect.
Yeah.
Find the one that works. Find
Mm.
the one that works. And that's where
For you.
Africa, we're
Yeah.
still not there. We're
Yeah.
copying
Yeah.
this democracy and it's not
Mm.
working for us. It's not even
Yeah.
working for the people from whom we're copying it, let alone
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's crazy because all that is, it's just mindset. Like we keep on copying and paste instead of, really think critically. And because we have brain in this continent, like really, okay, which direction should we take? Which direction is better for our people? And it's kind of impossible because I mean we don't have that unity that is needed because we need to sit as a continent like, okay, which direction we want our continent to be in 50 years from now for the next generation? Where do we want to go? How do we want to run, the education system? How do we want to teach our kids? Right now we're in AI, you don't need you don't have HR department no more. Like very soon a lot of people will lose their jobs because in the company everything can be done by AI. Yeah,
yeah.
even here in Swahili Nation, we translate all the speeches of some of the Western countries. I mean, some of the Western countries in the continent actually, like Ibrahim Traore, we use we use AI to
Yes.
translate, you know, France into
Okay.
English.
Yes.
So you're not gonna need transcript anybody to write, because you can use CapCut and then it could just give you transcript in a minute like that. Actually,
Yes.
in a second, it gives you everything. So where are we going? Are we training our people to really embrace this new world, so-called new world order, and where we are going? Are we going to be in the competitive market, or we just gonna need again to bring them here in our continent and to work for us in those position that, you know, these are kind of things that definitely our leaders have to think, and we need to work on, you know, improving our skills and everything, and learning. Guys, by the way, if you're watching this, please learn an AI and do everything you can to get that knowledge. Is very important for the world we are right now. Population, let's talk about population, and then we have the last point. I'm sorry, I'm taking a lot of your time, but I want
It's
to take
okay.
get all of these out of you,
Yes. Yes.
because I don't
Yes.
know when it will be the next time.
Yeah.
Population.
So population, Africa, a continent of what's an estimated 1.4 billion people. That's
Mm-hmm.
a huge market, right? So if
Yeah,
you look at
yeah.
it just from a commercial lens,
Mm,
I work in business.
yeah.
That's a massive market. So
Mm,
you've got your market there. So if we all these things we're talking about, integration,
mm,
etc., you don't
mm,
even need to export. You don't need to import. You could be
yeah.
self-sufficient. But okay, we don't
Mm,
have everything and we live in the globalized world for good or ill. Okay.
mm,
But you've got all these people. You touched on it earlier when you were talking about AI. And I
mm,
also mentioned it about when we're talking about equipping
yeah.
and empowering the youth.
Yeah.
When I talk about population and when I think about statecraft,
Mm,
it boils down to one thing: people.
mm,
Simple.
yes.
We
Yes.
don't need to overcook it. We don't need to overcomplicate it.
Mm,
Leadership, politics,
mm,
security, this protection thing we're talking about,
mm,
partnership, this collaboration, everything is about people. Even in business, you're a business person, Mika.
mm,
Business is
mm,
people.
yeah.
So when we talk about population and leadership, it's all
Mm,
about people. And what
mm,
pains me is when our leaders or
mm,
politicians, because they're not really leaders, are
mm,
so engrossed in their own interests, they
mm,
miss the people that they're there to
mm,
serve. I have an
mm,
example in my book, and a lot of people will be familiar with the story of the boy who's walking along the seashore, and there's
mm,
thousands and thousands of starfish stranded on the seashore, and he starts to pick them up one by one and throws them back.
mm,
And the
mm,
passerby says to him, "Why are you doing that? It's a waste of time. There's so many of these. It's not going to make a difference." Picks one up and
mm,
says, "It makes a difference to this one." Throws it
mm,
back. And the reason I tell that story is when you talk about population and people, it's
mm,
easy to be overwhelmed with the scope and scale of the problem.
mm,
1.4 billion people is a lot. Even if you
mm,
break it down by nation, Nigeria, we have
mm,
over 200 million people.
mm,
It's the scale is so vast. I think, oh my goodness, it's easy to be overwhelmed. But when you think about it, like that boy with the starfish, think about
mm,
one person, individualize the problem. Then you start to see and find a path forward to harness your population. The diversity of Africa, we know, is so enormous. And that
mm,
can be weaponized, and sometimes it's weaponized by the political elite, but
yeah.
it can also be harnessed for good. So, look, this diverse continent, if we take
Mm,
Nigeria, for instance, the diversity in terms of language, in terms of culture and custom, can become a tool in the hands of uh, evil
yeah.
elites that want to manipulate those differences and use them as a
Mm,
weapon. But
yeah.
it can also be a gift. You can say,
Mm,
the reason why some of these nations advance is they harness the diversity.
yeah.
Multiple voices
Mm,
give different opinions.
mm,
And so I think something, you think something else, somebody else thinks something else, and so on.
mm,
Between all of us, we find the best solution. So
mm,
we can truly harness our population and
mm,
build them. And when we talk about the youth and AI, back to that point, it's really important that education,
yeah.
human capital development is part of harnessing and
Mm,
leveraging the gift of the human resources that we're so blessed with. So
mm,
population, making sure that leaders understand, okay, the individual, the one
mm,
matters.
mm,
And the population is a collective of all the singles that then come together and
mm,
say, these are the people you serve. These are
yeah.
the people that you need to figure out how to make the most of them, get the
Mm.
best out of them, provide those goods and services that really build a nation. A nation is not an abstract entity,
Yeah.
it's a collection of people. And when politicians lose sight of the people, that's
Yeah.
when they go wrong, because then it
Yeah.
becomes about me, because about my family, because about this, that, and the other. But keep your eyes on the people you are meant to serve. If I
Yes.
think of you,
Yes.
Mika, as
Yes.
a person and not just one of several millions, how
Mm.
I treat you matters. And that's why I said in the beginning, it starts
Mm.
with me, it starts with you. If
Yeah.
I can't be a decent person where I work now, if I'm not
Mm.
diligent, when we tried to set up
Mm.
this call, I said to you, it needs to be in the evening because I'm
Mm.
duty bound to finish my work.
Mm.
What I'm being paid to do, I'm duty bound to finish that. That's what I expect of myself. That's the standard to which I hold myself. Then
Mm.
we can have a conversation. This is a bit of a
Yeah.
side thing for me. It's it's a separate passion. No one is paying me to do it. But the job I'm being
Yeah.
paid to do, I owe it to my organization. I owe it to myself to do
Mm.
that first, get that out of the way, and then have this in my own free time. When
Mm.
I write what I put on LinkedIn, what I put on my website, I'm not speaking for my company, I speak it for
Mm.
myself. But
Mm.
population is really about making sure that the people you serve, it goes back to service. It goes
Yeah.
back to understanding that it's not about you, the
Mm.
politicians, it's not about them, it's about who they serve. And I think a lot of them forget that. Once they're in that seat, it becomes about, first of all, I need to repay the people that have got me into this position. So I need to sort them out first. Then I need to line my own pocket and make sure I'm comfortable. And all the priorities become discarded.
Yeah.
And that's the sad thing about it, because
Mm.
you lose sight of the people and then you lose sight of your mandate and everything else goes wrong.
Dr. Kofo, one of the message that I, 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 I came up with here in Ethiopia right now is very simple. Is that the beauty of Ethiopia is Ethiopians,
Mm.
and the beauty of Africa is Africa. Right? We can talk about all these touristic sites we have. We can talk about the roads. We can talk about these big projects are going on in the continent. We can talk about our culture, our food. We can talk about that. But all that aside, the beauty of our countries is actually people. And looking at the continent, look at the number and everything that you were saying, it really got me thinking that Africa is the only continent that we have everything it takes for us to be successful, yet we don't know how to use them, right? We
Okay.
have resources where other countries like Singapore, you mentioned, they don't have, right?
Yes.
We have people, young generation. I started in South Korea, lived there for 9 years. I was looking at the
Mm.
projection of the country. They'll say that in 2025, actually this year, people first of all, they're not getting married. They don't want to have kids because of the expenses of life. And therefore, in few years at that time, I think it was in 2019 or 20 something. So I was looking at the projection
Mhm.
2025 all the way to 2030. The population actually right now in South Korea and Japan, the youngest population is actually down there. You have all the population from 60 years and above. And that's why you find out these countries, they give a lot of scholarship to
Yeah.
African students to go there, not
Yeah.
because they really want to support you, no, but because they need manpower. Once you
Yes.
go there, there's so many programs actually to mingle them. So a lot of our people actually they get married there with people, and then they get citizenship there. Some of them they're being employed, by different companies. They just settle there in the countries. But basically because they need them to be there in order to kind of to cover that
Mm.
that
Decline.
shortage of the younger population that they have in their countries. So many international projects they go, so many international like challenges, just so that a lot of foreigners can go there, just mingle and maybe decide to move there. They have been clearing the environment right now. It's so much easier to live there in Korea right now than the time I went there in
Mm.
2013.
Okay.
They make it so much easier so that it may be able to. But you look at in our continent, we have everything like that, and yet we're not using it. And but and what is happening is, as you said before, like we are leaving our countries actually for whatever reason, and we find a better life somewhere, whereby in our continent, Dr. Kofo, I can tell you that opportunities that I see on the ground,
Mm.
we have an opportunity to make billions of money if we do business in the continent. That's why even myself, I had to move. I had to reallocate from the city I was living. I was in Dar es Salaam, but I moved to another city, Dodoma, whereby there's less people. It's a capital city,
Mm.
but it's not really advanced. It's kind of like Lagos and Abuja, right?
Right.
But Dodoma is lesser than Abuja, but there's so much opportunity to create wealth, to make business, and to make life out of for ourselves. So it is it is sad that we have everything, but yet the countries that they don't have
Yeah.
everything, they are they're marching forward,
Yeah.
and we're still playing mark time whatever we are, and we're not
Yeah.
really going anywhere. Yeah, but I think everything that you said, it's really, I really hope people are listening, because this conversation of almost 2 hours, 1 and 30 minutes right now, it is really
We've
can
talked a
transform
lot.
content if we put into action. We do. The last one. Okay, so let's go to the last one,
Yeah.
which is my favorite. All right, this is the reason why I started this movement, and this is the reason why sometimes I lose sleep, and
Yeah.
I know it's the same thing for you because of the books you write, and the vision and the heart you have towards Africa. Let's talk about this. This is, I wanted to end with this note,
Mhm.
because it's why we are here today. That I am from Tanzania, you're from Nigeria, but we are here sitting together, talk about the fate of this continent,
Yeah.
like brother and sister, partnership.
Yes.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, I love partnership because I think it's been
Mm,
it's a bedrock of so many things.
yeah.
If you talk about international relations, that's precisely why you have
Mm,
organizations like the United Nations,
mm,
WHO, and
mm,
so on. You have these multilateral organizations because
mm,
in the aftermath of those horrible wars and the Cold War, people came
mm,
to understand that, look, there's no way that this world can be stable unless we partner.
mm,
Now, one of the things, when you think about international community or the international society, there's
mm,
this expression called is an anarchical system. And
mhm,
what that means is that there's no overarching arbiter. There's no
mm,
world government. There's no
mm,
single person. However powerful
mm,
Trump is, sovereignty
mm,
is sacrosanct. That means
yeah.
each and every individual nation
Mm,
can be a law unto itself. And that's
mm,
why America, whether he
mm,
gets blocked by the courts or not, can
mm,
issue all these orders. And
mm,
that's why each nation, their
mm,
principles of international relations, diplomacy,
mm,
intervention, non-interference in other
mm,
people's,
mm,
other nations' affairs is so
mm,
important. And because you don't have that single overarching arbiter, you live in this anarchical system.
yeah. Yeah.
That's why partnership is so important, because the
Mm,
world we live in means
mm,
that sovereign states can harm each other. Yeah. So
mm,
there's nothing stopping Kenya
mm,
from,
mm,
for whatever reason, deciding it wants to attack Rwanda because
mm,
they have some issues. And to
mm,
prevent the world wars, as we've talked about in the beginning, that was
mm,
some of the reasons why those wars began in the first place, because you did not have these platforms to resolve issues before they arose and before they blew up into something even bigger. And
yeah.
the United Nations was meant to be,
Mm,
its predecessor was called the League of Nations, by the way, but that became defunct because it did not, it actually did not
mm,
prevent the Second World War. So,
yeah.
and that's why partnership is so important, because it's a platform and an
Mm,
opportunity for equal states. And you
mm,
can say, okay, is Africa equal? Well, it should
yeah.
be. In
Mm,
theory, it is. So let's work with that theory.
mm,
Equal states can cooperate
mm,
towards a mutual benefit. So if we talk about the
mm,
climate emergency, that is
yeah.
one that no single state can resolve by itself. So you
Mm,
need this multilateral approach. You need a global response to
mm,
address it. So partnership is so key. I mean, as a businesswoman, as a business person yourself,
mm,
you need partners. You can't
yeah.
succeed
Yeah.
in anything alone. even working in a cooperation, teamwork. Say teamwork makes the dream work. I know that's a cliche, but you always need to work with people to achieve anything significant. And partnership is so key. At the moment in Africa, I don't think we're really succeeding there. And you mentioned at the beginning, the departure of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger from the African Union. It's not great. The African Union needs reform. No one is denying that, but everybody exiting it is not going to help. So we really need to work together, get AFTA up and running. I'm really passionate about that. I talk about it a lot because it's so critical that we develop this economic community of African states, and we break down the barriers. We dismantle these blockers that are holding us back, and we truly unite. I'm reading a book by Kwame Nkrumah. It's an old book. It's called Africa Must Unite. And some people might know it. It's very old. It's a good book. But the point he makes, and again, no leader is perfect. So if people that say, oh, Kwame Nkrumah had, okay, let's set aside your prejudices against him. But the book contains so many important nuggets about why African unity was important back then and why it's important now. And that's where partnership is so key, so critical. I think as a continent is indispensable. If we don't get that right, we're going to continue in this vicious cycle of exploitation, of modern day slavery, neocolonialism. Is going to be on and on and on until we wake up and truly work together, break down barriers and unite. I mean, the single largest, biggest market we're sitting on top of it. Resources, abundant, we're sitting on top of them. Human resources, endless, we're sitting on top of. We have everything. I'm not saying we should divorce ourselves from the rest of the globe. We're in a globalized world. That remains. But as an entity, as a continent, we really should be a force to be reckoned with. We should be calling the shots, at least for our own destiny, our own future. We should not leave it in the hands of anyone else. So I think partnership for me is so critical and fundamental. And our leaders, again, need to wake up and stop all this protectionism, this isolationism, this self-interest of, okay, I'm just going to look after my own backyard. It doesn't serve anybody. It doesn't help.
Yeah. Well, you said it all. You said it all, Dr. Kofo. And let them who have, ears, these ears, let them hear. Let them hear the word of the Lord.
Yes, amen to that.
Dr. Kofo, I don't know what to say. I'm gonna need to go back to listen to this stream. I always do that. But I want to really appreciate you for really let us hear what you have, and to just share with the rest of us. And I really hope that we will take initiative with everything that we spoke about. At the beginning, you say something that we need to start with conversation, and it reminded me when I started this movement 5-6 years ago. I was always talking. Every single day I was here talking, and I was getting criticized because of talking. Because sometimes, to be honest, I did not even know what I was talking about, but I was just feeling something. I can't even watch those videos back then. I feel so embarrassed. But then it led me to implementation, because I talk too much, and I actually believe, right? Okay, the scripture says, like, faith comes from hearing, hearing the word of the Lord. So leave the second part. But after talking for so long, it actually created faith in me, and I went out to start doing something, right? So there's so many things that we started to do right now. Some of them I think I'll find some time to share with you personally, to kind of like see, since last time we met until right now where we are at. But it start with this, and if we really pay attention, okay, people will see, like 5 years ago and where today, where I am, I'm in a different place, right? And 5 years from now I'll be in a different place. Not just because we talk, but because I had to take an action, to be an example and to do. So I really hope what we are sharing here, it is not a waste of time for the rest of everybody who is watching, but we really will be the change that Africa needs. Right, we really put it into action in our businesses. If you're a CEO, if you're employed, if whatever, because this year at SNOA, we say that it's the year of high standard. That Africans must hold ourselves into high standard of accountability and
Yes.
responsibility. So that is what we are running with this year, and I hope we'll take that spirit of accountability and be responsible and really go out there and make change. Because if 64 people right now we go out there make change, we're gonna impact another 64 people. We're gonna impact another
Yes.
200 people, and eventually, we're gonna change the society. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you very much for coming here to share this with us. I appreciate
And,
you.
and thank you, Mika. Thank you for the invitation. And thank you, as I said, it's always a pleasure talking to you. And this is great. We've had this conversation. And let
Mm,
me end with one thing that is not on LinkedIn. It's not on LinkedIn, not because
mm,
I hide it. I don't hide my face. But when I
yeah.
wrote the book, there were 6 P's of all
Mm,
those different pillars of statecraft. One
yeah.
is prayer and pleasing God. And the reason I want to
Wow.
talk about that one is you
Wow.
opened this session with prayer. And that
Yes.
really, I love that because
Mm,
let me be clear. When I talk about
mm,
prayer and pleasing God, I'm not
mm.
talking necessarily about a religion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Faith is about a relationship, and it
Yes.
doesn't matter to me whether you're a Christian,
Mm,
Muslim,
mm,
atheist, Buddhist,
mm,
Hindu, whatever. It doesn't really matter.
mm.
It is all underpinned by love.
Yeah.
Where there's no love,
Mm,
everything else makes no sense. And everything we're talking about politics, leadership, population, and protection, if we're motivated by love, then it answers a big question. The
yeah.
Bible says, I'm a Christian. That's the faith I practice.
Yeah.
That how do you say you love God that you don't see if you don't love the person that you do see? So when we talk about people
Mm,
and we're talking about individualizing the challenge
mm,
and then making that difference with one, you mentioned there might be 64 people watching this now. As you said, if
yeah.
those 64 go forward and are the change they want to see and influence
Mm,
another 64, the
mm,
amplification and the multiplication effect of that is
mm,
how worlds change. They don't change
yeah.
overnight. It changes, as I said, with conversations start, and then that conversation is converted into action, and those actions are then carried forward by one person and the next person and the next person. And that's how
Mm,
change begins and blows up and amplifies. And truly, I describe myself as a change agent. And this is what it's about. I
yeah.
can't change every single thing, but I'm having this
Mm,
conversation with you. I'm the change I want to see. You're the change you want to see. And
mm,
hopefully we see that change multiplied and amplified across the world. So
mm,
thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the
mm,
time. Thank you for the invitation. And I
mm,
wish you a good rest of the day. I wish you a
yeah.
good evening. And I just charge you and everybody else and myself to go forward and take this
Yes.
world and change it into the way we want it to become. Thank you so
Yes.
much.
Well, Dr. Kofo, because you say prayer and
Pleasing
what
God.
and pleasing God, would you
Yes,
mind to close this session with a word of prayer?
sure. Yes, let's pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for the opportunity that you've given us to gather here today. Thank you, Lord, that you put in Mika's heart the desire to have this discussion with me. And thank you, Lord, that you've given us the tools, even this technology to enable and facilitate this conversation virtually. Thank you for all those that are listening and those that will listen. And Lord, we pray for our continent. We pray,
Yes.
Father, for change. I truly believe that with you, all things are possible. Nothing is impossible. So, Lord, I pray that there would be change, that we would see a transformation, and it would be a transformation that is achieved without bloodshed. I pray, Lord, that your power would come and it would overtake our leaders, it would overtake our people, and truly we would see a different world. Father, I pray and believe by faith for an Africa that is truly seen as important, that takes its place as central, influential, and important in the world. I pray, Lord, that all those that hear me and have heard me and Mika today and will hear us, and they will be the change they want to see, and we'll see that amplification, that multiplication, and that paying it forward. And we'll see a transformation in our continent, in our lifetime. I believe that by faith. In Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I love you.
Thank you so much. I love you too. Thank you very much.
To your family. Bye-bye.
Yes, many thanks. Bye.
All right, guys. Wow. What a session. What a session. What a session. What a session. Wow. Once again, I appreciate everybody who came here today, everybody who is watching this right now, and those who will watch later. We appreciate you for setting your time aside and to be here with us, to be here for this session. Please leave in the comment section your thoughts, your opinion about what we've been talking about. Here. Let us know in the comment section. We really appreciate, because your opinion matters, your point matters. So please let us know there down in the comment section. And yeah, Africa must unite. Africa, this is our time, and everything we have is out here. Everything, guys, everything, like literally everything, man, everything. And that's why sometimes when we pray, we just thank God, because, man, we have everything. And it's up to us to hold ourselves into high standard of responsibility and accountability, to use what we have. Because if we don't, somebody else will. They must be used. So if we don't, somebody will use. And we must make that decision. And we must do that. We must do that. Let our mindset be changed and be transformed. Your mindset could be your own enemy. So change the way you think. Change the way you operate. Change the way you walk. Change the way you do things. Change. If A is not working, change, go to B. And we can change this continent. We can. You can change. If you're in a family, you can change your family. If you're in a community, you can change your community. If you're in a company, you can change your company. Change is very contagious. And it's so attractive. So we have a part to play. And I hope everybody, each and every single one of us, will play our part. Lastly, I'm gonna have another conversation with my brother. I spoke 2 days ago about Congo. We're gonna have another conversation. I wanted to have it today. Today I wanted to have 2 conversations, but he's in transition, and tomorrow as well I might be in transition. So hopefully we'll have that conversation in maybe tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. Yeah, but you guys will see it. Yeah, but keep praying for Congo, and keep our brothers and sisters in your thoughts and prayer. And yeah, on my side, I'm done. Thank you guys for coming in. Thank you guys for chilling here with us. And I hope we've learned. And yeah, so God bless you. I love everybody. And I'll see you guys very soon.